Well, people around the world are crunching numbers right now after President Donald Trump unveiled a range of tariffs on imports into the U.S.
Well, the universal baseline levy is 10%. Additional reciprocal tariffs will apply to trading partners that the U.S. deems it has significant deficits with. The baseline kicks in on Saturday, with the rest next Wednesday.
Mr. Trump unleashed the duties and named names on what he labeled as Liberation Day.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper.
Making the announcement in the Rose Garden, he wielded a chart of the hit list of territories facing reciprocal tariffs. If they impose a tax on U.S. goods, the U.S. retaliates with roughly half as much as on their goods, a so-called discounted rate.
Dominating the list are many from the Indo-Pacific. China faces a 34% reciprocal rate. Now, this is on top of an existing 20% tariff, taking the total to 54%. For the EU, it is 20%, Vietnam 46%, Taiwan 32%, Japan 24%, India 26%, and South Korea 25%.
In Southeast Asia, Cambodia tops at 49%, followed by lower rates for Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Singapore and the UK both face 10% tariff on their imports into the U.S.
In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country.
The global tariffs follow another new 25% levy on all foreign-made vehicles. Mr. Trump's aim is to generate revenue, reshore businesses to the United States, and punish countries for what he says are years of unfair trade practices.
But many economists are skeptical. Tariffs are paid by importers who would pass on the cost to consumers by hiking prices. President Trump insists it's the foreign countries that pay the cost of tariffs. Critics argue he's taking a financial and political gamble that could plunge the U.S. economy into a downturn, risk sparking a global trade war, and rupture long-standing alliances.
For more on this still developing story, because we're still crunching the numbers, Simon Ox joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Hi, Simon. So here's what we know, minimum 10% baseline for all imports into the United States, but as much as 49% for Cambodia, going down to 34% for China and 24% for Japan. Now, Trump may believe tariffs may be the panacea to what he deems unfair trade, on this so-called Liberation Day. But could this all eventually backfire on America, you think?
Well, look, that is definitely what some Republican members in Congress think. And while governments overseas were beseeching the White House right up until the last minute, making representations to President Trump, urging him not to punish them unfairly, members of Congress from the Republican side of the aisle were also trekking to the White House today, particularly those from rural states and states near the border with Canada, the border with Mexico, very, very concerned about the possibility that this is going to lead to an immediate economic slowdown in their particular districts, their particular parts of the country. And that, of course, will then be visited upon them by voters who will very quickly get very angry with the Trump administration. I mean, the president's argument is this is Liberation Day. It's the beginning of Boomtown USA. Foreign exporters of product to the United States are going to understand that they can avoid the tariffs completely by coming here and making their products in the United States, boosting the country's manufacturing industries. But economists say that is not something that can happen quickly, and certainly not rapidly enough to head off the risk of inflation and the risk of America moving down an inexorable path towards going into recession. So President Trump has rolled the dice and is now presiding over the most protectionist government that this country has seen since the 1930s.
Simon, and these reciprocal tariffs potentially fractures Washington's ties even with its closest friends. How is the Trump administration planning to deal with that?
Well, I think they're going to be on the receiving end, first of all, of a number of requests for clarity, because as you were saying, the numbers are still being crunched here. The president spoke of a 34% tariff on China. The White House says that's actually a 54% tariff on China because of the 20% duties that had previously been announced. So the numbers that have been put out for all countries need to be looked at closely, and certainly the charges that President Trump asserted that foreign countries are placing on American products do not necessarily chime with reality, according to many economists and analysts who have looked at it. But the president made it clear his door is open for friend and foe alike to come and try and negotiate with him and help him find a path to reducing the tariffs that he's placed on those countries. And in many ways, I think the key sentence that he articulated here earlier today is this one. In many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. So this is particularly an enormous challenge for America's traditional allies and partners around the world.
Simon, as always, thank you very much. Appreciate the time and effort. Simon Marks in Washington, D.C.